not again. If you're watching this, then that means one of two things. It either means that you're investigating some weird cultists, or you just woke up Cthulhu, and you're desperately looking for a how to survive guide. Well, I've got good news and bad news. This guy can definitely help you understand, well, kind of understand, what's going on in this universe. The bad news is, if you just woke up Cthulhu, well, I've got a level with you. Your chances aren't good. But I might be able to help you survive a little bit longer than most, and maybe get back to civilization. There's a possible third reason, and that's that you're trying to find Cthulhu, but you're absolutely insane if you're trying to do that, and it is not recommended. Okay, first off, if you can, you should
leave this universe.
This place is filled with all manner of horrors around every corner. And we haven't even talked about the great old ones. There's even a danger in learning about them. I don't know what possessed you to even come here in the first place, or, well, perhaps I do. If you've decided to go to this universe, then there's actually a reason for it. But first, in order to survive Cthulhu, you need to know what all you're getting into. Starting with number 1, Mr. Henry Anthony Wilcox. This gentleman is the first piece of our puzzle. Wilcox was a genius and an art sculptor. He described himself as a psychically hypersensitive. As a sculptor, he crafted something from his nightmares, a bas-relief with inscriptions. He didn't know what the inscriptions said, but the monster he sculpted above them is the first hint we had at this terrifying creature. It contains a combination of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature. So Wilcox is having crazy dreams about ooze, odd geometry, inscriptions, and a horrifying creature. So what's happening here? There is a horror locked away somewhere, and that horror, named Cthulhu, is reaching out psychically to people. This psychic link terribly affects Mr. Wilcox, and even sends him into a fever state for several days. So your first warning is that Cthulhu can invade your mind in dreams, particularly if you are already psychically sensitive. From what little information we have about this, there does not seem to be any distance with which you are safe. However, it does seem to be blunted a little bit if there's a lot of water in the way, but either way, be extremely careful. Cthulhu has
psychic abilities,
and that's actually part of the reason why you're interested in this universe. Next, we need to talk about the statue. The first time we learned about a statue was from Inspector Legras in 1908. He brought this statue to the Archaeological Society to have it examined. The statue was about 7 to 8 inches tall and pristine artistic workmanship. It was a little green statue with gold lines and gold flecks in it, and it had an octopus head, dragon wings, and a man-like body. No geologist knew what material it was made of, which begs the question, what is it and where did it come from? The answer, it came from Cthulhu himself. Cthulhu brought them from a distant star or galaxy and gave them to his followers. This leads us to the cultists. There are several things to note about the cultists. The first is that they could literally be anywhere. Anyone could be a cultist. There are pockets of them all over the world, and the police are continually discovering new sects. One common place to find a cultist would be wherever there are sailors. For some reason, many cultists tend to be sailors. Probably something to do with the proximity of the lost city of Stone being somewhere in the deep waters. We'll get to that. Now, this is about as tame as it gets. The rest of the details become much more disturbing, so this is your warning. Most cultist cells that have been identified do in fact appear to be human. However, they tend to be rather deformed and distorted from extended amounts of interbreeding. And it's also possible that they've become deformed from attempting spiritual closeness with their god. Basically, the more they worship their god, the more physically and mentally corrupt they become. The cultist cell that we have the most information about and tells us the most about Cthulhu is the one hidden away in the backwoods of Louisiana. This group was horrendously disfigured and considered a gruesome hybrid spawn. They would kidnap women and children from surrounding villages and take them to their cursed area deep in the terrible woods. Now, this is particularly notable. All the good villagers were as afraid of where they were performing the rituals as them actually kidnapping and doing the rituals. You see, the very idea where they decided to perform their voodoo had a dark legend that said there was a formless white polypus thing with luminous eyes. And if you looked at it, it meant death. The legend says it was there before any living creature existed in that place. Now, I have to pause here. This isn't a description of Cthulhu himself, but perhaps a description of one of his lesser species. If you happen to run into this creature, I can offer no advice on fighting, subduing, or evading that creature. That's not what this guide is for. Back to the cultists. It gets worse. The cultists would do, honestly, unspeakable things to the people they captured. They performed their ritual around a tall, dark monolith with a statue at its top. None of their captives survived. Okay, but what do we learn from them about Cthulhu? Well, one thing we learn is that Cthulhu is some sort of god of horror who loves violence, depravity, and destruction. We also learn that the cultists would worship the great old ones who lived before there were any men or living beings and came to the earth from the sky. Basically, they're alien gods of horror, and Cthulhu is the greatest, most powerful. This was all difficult information to gather because the majority of the 47 captured cultists from Louisiana were deemed completely insane, and all swore that none of them did the killing. They said that all the killing was done by black-winged ones from deep inside the haunted wood. Only 2 were determined sane enough to receive the death penalty. Thankfully, or unthankfully, depending on your view, which might evolve by the end of this video, there was Castro. Castro was an old sailor who had met with other supposed immortal cultists in the mountains of China and learned about where the great old ones came from. They said that when all the stars were just right, they could travel from world to world. But when the stars were just right, they would be trapped on the world they stopped at. They could not live at this point, but also could not die, because Cthulhu kept them sleeping deep in the earth and under the water, waiting until the stars align again. So where exactly is the deep underwater part here? Castro tells us of the great stone city of, I hope I'm saying this right, Rulia, composed of monoliths and sepulchers, but has since sunk beneath the ocean into the deep waters. Despite being lost for untold amounts of time, the Cthulhu can psychically communicate and has kept the memory and loyal, albeit crazy, followers very strong. Some of this is hinted at in the Necronomicon, but we'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, that was just a rumor of the stone city. What it really looked like was something more alien, disgusting, and terrible. The first-hand accounts we have is that there are Titan oozy blocks that made a sort of staircase, but for something well beyond and larger than human. The sun appeared to distort from the localized air in the area, and even through the mist of the surrounding water. All the angles of rock and stone appeared to look like they were bending one way at first glance, and then another direction at a second glance. More importantly, just being in the presence of that location would cause you to feel innate terror before even laying eyes on the unnatural stone. At the top of the Titan stairs was a giant monolith, and at the base of the monolith was an immense barn-looking door, except obviously not a barn. It also seemed to both stand upright, but also seemed like it was sideways, like a trap door. So just in case you find yourself at this door, you should not open it. If you're watching this guy because you opened the door, then you should subscribe to this channel, and you should run.
Run, Luke, run.
Yes, you should run. You should get as far away from that place as possible, because the only reason you're able to see that door is because the stars have aligned, and that means you open that door, and you have just released Cthulhu, the lead god of the great old ones.
Fly, you fools.
Again, assuming you've opened the door, then you'll see more incredible distortions of walls and doorway as the portal opens. A mass cloud of smoke will exit the opening and blot out the sun for a period of time. The smell could make you pass out or be sick, and the slopping sound from deep within is definitely a sign to run. That is your best chance at survival. If you're still looking at the doorway, then you will see a gelatinous green mountainous creature emerge. Now, it's possible that you're so terrified at this point to even move, and I'm sorry to say, if this is the case, your heart will soon stop out of pure fear. If you can move, you have a 2 in 8 chance of making it back to your ship. Hooray! Now, in this very moment, the eldritch horror stepping foot again in our open air. If you happen to be psychically sensitive, like Mr. Wilcox, then you will also be sent into a raving mad fever at that very telepathic instant. The great mass of green sticky alien spawn has come, and Cthulhu has awakened. While you're hopefully sprinting for your life, you'll likely see a behemoth gelatinous creature, much like the statues that we talked about earlier, except it's as big as a mountain this time. An octopus-like head, human-like body, scales, black wings, and flabby claws. While you're running, do take care of the terrain. This is an otherworldly stone with unnatural rules. We are not sure if the Great One can control it or not, but it can appear one way, then suddenly appear different, and completely engulf you and swallow you up. Yes,
The stones can eat you.
assuming you're the faster runner, you should hopefully make it back to your vessel. You've likely seen several men be swatted away in a smear of blood from the monstrous gigantic claws. Once in your vessel, make it go very fast, all the fast, the most fast, go fast. Now, it will probably take some time to get the speed you need. You're probably in this universe around 1926, so you have a steamboat. While you're sailing away, you will probably notice that Cthulhu has decided to chase you. That's what he does. He chases you and he kills everything. Oh, okay, listen. I know you just saw a bunch of people turn into mist, and someone else literally eaten by rocks, and 2 other people dying from terror. But you need to do exactly what I say in order to potentially live a little longer. Okay, turn your boat directly towards Cthulhu. Yes, you're going to make your boat go as fast as possible and leave your fate with a different god that may or may not exist in this universe, the god of chance. It's your only hope. Get your engine moving as fast as you possibly can and drive straight towards that terrible entity. If you're lucky, your ship will blast straight through the horrid giant squid head and leave an enormous hole in the thing behind you. This will give you enough time to escape. There is a little bit of bad news here though. One, obviously that might not work, but if it does work, that won't kill Cthulhu. In fact, we have no idea how to kill Cthulhu. He will actually start repairing and healing himself as soon as you blast through, but you should still be able to get away, hopefully. Well, now that you know all this, there is even more bad news. You're ultimately not going to make it. Possessing the very knowledge of these things is essentially a death sentence. You'll be able to likely make it back to civilization at this point and maybe even live out a few months, but the other companion you had on the ship will probably already be dead from insanity, and even if you can somehow find the will to battle both the insanity and residual psychic effects of of Cthulhu, the cultists don't like people knowing things. They will likely hunt you down and end you to stop the spread of knowledge of Cthulhu. Some of this information is documented in the Necronomicon, which also, if you happen to read the Necronomicon, you will go insane. Well, now you know, and you're likely doomed from knowledge. But take heart. Maybe you'll be the one to figure out how to bring an end to the greatest old one, Cthulhu himself. Either way, please share this guide with someone else you think also may know too much. Good luck, everyone.